Hello, happy weekend. I want to talk about manifesting, and I want to talk manifesting directly in relation to YourZahir. Now, Zahar came from Folio Colio and his book, The Zahar. When I read this, it blew my mind. He's you probably know, the author of The Alchemist. Bloody love The Alchemist. But when he introduced me to the concept of the Zahar, hi gorgeousness, when he introduced me to the concept of Zahar, I was like, oh, no, I know that, I relate to that, because the things that we most want, we often get obsessed with, don't we? I know when I wanted to lose weight, I was obsessed with diets. I was obsessed with like looking at the calories. I was obsessed. When we really want something, our brains, if you have a brain anything like mine, become obsessed with that thing and with getting that thing. It becomes a Zahar. If you are in a relationship, I know the relationship with my husband, I wanted him, I was desperate for him to love me in all the ways that I wanted to be loved. And he was like a Zahar, I'd be constantly trying to figure him out and trying to work out what he wanted, what he needed, so that I could get him to love me in the ways that I wanted to be loved. Or if you've got children, they're like, you're upset. I'm obsessed with my children. They are a Zahar to me. So when we start looking at our world, quite often the things that we like the most, actually in these weird contorted ways, because that's the way the brain works, they become a Zahar and we become obsessed about them. If we think about our brain patterns and neurology of what this looks like on a scientific level, because that always helps me. I'm like, oh, I can see this clearer, because my brain just wants to still be obsessed. You don't want me to keep working at the thing that I want the most. You don't want me to keep trying to figure out the thing that I want the most. Emma, when you look at it as science, the way that the brain works is different parts of your brain fire up. When you think about the thing, you most want, when you think about what we'll call the Zahar, just for ease, and it might not be a Zahar, possibly will, but it might not be. But when you start thinking and looking at this thing that you want most in this way, the brain lights up. Something triggers a thought of you see somebody cute and happy and in love, and you're like, why isn't my marriage like that? Or you see somebody crushing it in their business and you're like, why isn't my business like that? Then you start thinking. So that first trigger sets off this chain reaction in the brain, and one thought leads to another thought, leads to another thought, and actually we think that we're thinking all these different thoughts, but 95% of our thoughts are exactly the same. We're firing and wiring the same thoughts over and over again. So when we think about the thing that we want, that we usually wish would be different to what it is in our current reality, we're firing the same neurology round and around and around and around. And that sends a frequency to the universe. How we manifest, how we create the life that we've got is literally by the frequency that the different brain waves send and signal out into the world. That reality collapses into our surroundings. That reality has been created around the Zahar because we're telling ourselves the same thoughts and the same cycle, the loops around and around. And I always use a metaphor of a forest. Imagine the tracks of a forest it's just a way now. You've walked that route so many flipping times. There's no trees there, there's no bushes. It's a dirt path. You just walk that way because it's the way. Now, your Zahar, what you want exists outside of it being an obsession. It exists outside of it being a Zahar. The beautiful relationship that you want with your husband or your wife. The sex life that you're desperate for with your husband or your wife. The business taking off in all the ways that you want it to. Your healing, your body's transformation, whatever it is, that exists outside of your Zahar. It exists outside of your obsession. It exists right now as a little pathway. And it's like these teeny tiny little footprints that are just in the forest, but they're just mouse prints. They've been trod so lightly you can't even see the way. But you tread that often enough, and slowly but surely, or not even slowly, sometimes you can get the bulldozer in there instantly. Hi gorgeousness. You can start to create this pathway. And the more you tread it, the more the pathways start to open up. And now you start to not be in the frequency of the Zahar, the obsession, the thing that you want most. You start to lightly, with a lightness, start to create this new route and this new pathway to thinking and seeing and being. No, you're not coming in the video. I'm going to use this again. That would be so random if we just started chatting. So when we can focus our energies outside of what's already established, we start to create something different. We start to create different energies. We start to manifest in different ways. Now, we just want to do it, don't we? We just want to say, okay, well, I want this. I know what I want. I don't want it to be an obsession. I don't want it to be a Zahar anymore, but I still want it. Like, we can't just decide in a moment we don't, like, okay, I don't want it to be my Zahar, so it won't be. I won't be obsessed about it, but I'll still get the thing. The way that we actually get to do it. Right now, your story up to this moment, the story up to the deep imprints inside the wood has been created by everything that's gone before. There is no time. It's all on one plane. But the way that we see it in our humanness is the past. When we look at what has gone before and led us to this point, we see all of the parts of our story that has led us to here. And when we continue to believe this story that's led us to here, we believe the Zahar. We believe that we must be obsessed and we must continue to think about it and do it in all the ways that are established, because everything in our lineage has brought us, in our story, has brought us to this point. So this is the way it's got to work. That's the maths that the brain does. And the idea of just releasing that is just a ridiculous one. I miss your face, how gorgeous. So what we're going to do, I'm going to save this so you can watch it and watch what came up to this point. What we're going to do is we're going to challenge that story. And not in ways of like, is that true? Is that right? Is that wrong? Because the brain's like, it's true. It's absolute. It's led me to here. This is why I need to get this Zahar, this end result. This is why my brain is obsessed with doing this. What we get to do is we get to be curious around that. And the way we do that is in being curious around the story that has led us to this point. And we don't just say, that's not my story anymore. The clues to the thing, the moreness that you're here to create that lies outside of the Zahar, they were always there. They have been desperately pulling at, like, you know, kids who like pull at your skirt because they want your attention. Those things have been underlying everything in your life from day one. And they were really loud to begin with. But they were silenced from you because you were acting weird and you weren't conforming and all those things. So they got silenced along the way. But they were there right from day one. But they're not really prevalent in your story because they've been eradicated. Like, you know, when you go somewhere and you see something or you smell something and all of a sudden you remember something, you're like, oh my God, it's that. They've always been there. They've always existed, but they've just been an undercurrent to this like story, this bigger story that we've just got. It's like a freight train, isn't it? And we just ended up on and just bulldozing our way, being like, no, this is the way. But we need to train ourselves to listen to those nuances, to be able to see what is already there. It's already happened. It's already a live part of you and it exists so loudly, but just underneath the current of all of that. When you can go and take yourself back into that story in a really gentle way, in an open way, being guided and steered to be like, look at it underneath it in this way, see this part, look and ask questions here. When you can look at the story there, you're like all of a sudden, and that's what awakenings are, like being able to see under the nuances of this big Zahar story of obsession with the story that your brain thinks that you should be living. When we can see the nuances that sit underneath it, it's like, okay. And so often it's just in one spark and we miss it. And that's why I'm creating this 6-day, it's going to be a 6-day experience, but it's something that we can just listen and tune into and come back and listen and tune into this live over and over again, because I'm going to leave it on my page. There's going to be one little nugget. We're going to be spending an hour together every single day for the next 6 days. And we're just going to be there. And we're going to write. We're going to use the written form. You can use lots of different ways. And I will share lots of different ways that I do it as as we move on with this work. But right now we're going to use the written form, because I know so many of us want to get our story out into the world in different ways. So we're going to practice using the written form, spending this time, an hour together every single day, to get bored, to want to give up, to want to do that, and then just write. Irrelevant, not so that anyone's going to see it, not so that it's going to be published, not so that it's going to go anywhere, just to write, and then watch how this little nugget of brilliance and beauty and joy comes to the surface and be like, that was there all along and I missed it. I didn't see it because this freight train was just too busy going and it was taking me down the track, and I've sidestepped and I've seen this. And then we're going to take that piece of beauty, and it might be one word, it might be one sentence, it might be one character, it might be one person that showed up in your world that's outside of this story, because your brain's like, I know that person, I know that story. You don't. This is what this experience has taught me. We don't know. We think we know because we think we've got the story laid out, but we don't. Underneath it, somewhere underneath here, we're like, you're like, hi gorgeous, you're like a key character. You're like the main rock star in this world, and I didn't even know you existed because my freight train brain was so obsessed with what the story of my life is. I missed you! And you're like, yay! Yay! And as you are willing, and it's not just, oh, I'm going to let go of my story and I'm going to see what my actual story is, because that's just conscious brain nonsense. That's just a different Zahir. And it's not that. It's just these awakenings and these realizations of these pieces of this puzzle that you didn't even know. There's a jigsaw waiting underneath it all that we didn't even know existed. And it's being able to touch little parts of that and being happy to touch that little part, which the brain isn't. It's like, is that it? Like, you've sat me here for an hour and that's all I've got. And then you take that little nugget and then you come back the next day and we sit for an hour with that little nugget, and then we go deeper into, it's like Alice in Wonderland, we go deeper into that little nugget and we're like, oh my God. And slowly this wonderland starts to build out of you, like, this is my actual story. My brain was obsessed with the Zahir of what this story is, but actually in reality, it's this. It's nothing like what my brain told me it was. It's this. So what you can do outside of the Zahir experience, what you can do is you can decide you're going to decide on a time and dedicate yourself to being in that moment and just write. I'm going to be sharing over the 6 days. It's always more helpful to come in a group with somebody who's going to lead it, with somebody who's going to give you prompts, with somebody that's going to be sharing their own experience and how they've done this in real time. Like, that's really helpful, but it's not necessary. You can absolutely raw knuckle it, like raw dog it, white knuckle it, and say to yourself, right, over the next 6 days, if Emma's doing this on Monday, over the next 6 days, I'm going to set an alarm, I'm going to set a timer, and I'm going to show up every day, and I'm just going to write. I'm going to write listening to what you've just shared in this. I'm going to write, and I'm going to see what comes up for me. And I'm going to take one little nugget from that written part, and I'm going to work with that the next day. And then the next day I'm gonna start to see what the Alice in Wonderland actually is, that's sitting underneath all of this that I've been missing, because my brain has been telling me this is the way it goes, this is the way it's meant to go. And actually I'm on the Zahir freight train and I don't want to be anymore. Sit with yourself for 6 days. We're starting Monday. Like, message me. What's coming up? What's coming up for you? And see what comes up underneath it. If you want to be part of this group, it's £44 for the 6-day experience, where I'm going to be, there's a live video that's gone out today. I've just emailed that out. And then which is the teachings in the background. You've got some of it from this as well. And then we're going to meet on Monday, and we're going to meet every day at 9 o'clock in the morning for 6 days. We're going to have the weekend as a break to go away and practice. Then we're going to come back on Monday again to just share our experiences and what's come up. But to start to go into the story, the true story of who you are, the true story of what you're here to do and what you're here to share. Every day I'm going to be sharing some different ways to look at it, some different ways to look into it, some different viewpoints, some different things to kind of be on the lookout for, some different springboards. There's more context to it that I can't share now, obviously, in like a short live. So if you want to be part of that, let me know and I will send you the link. If you want to do this over the next 6 days, do it. Know that I'll be doing it. Even sit down at 9 a.m, like do it. And let's see what comes out. And if you want to be part of the experience alongside me, or you want to be on Zoom with me and co-creating and have the more in-depth stuff, then you're welcome to. Let me know and I will send you the info. The Zahir. I keep calling it Zahir. It's not. It's Zahir. The Zahir is a menace. And once we are able to release ourselves from believing so absolutely that it's our answer, if we could just this, that and the other, we're free. We're free, and we're free to create in all the ways, all the magical ways that don't make any logical Zahir sense that we're meant to, and it leaves you feeling like, how is this my life? How is this real? Like, and that's a really cool place to create from. Let me know if you want any more details or if you have any questions. Much love.